Speaking of not embarrassed, Richard Steele's here. Richard Steele, of course, our emerging market expert on the program. He is a successful entrepreneur, years of experience in the market, and one of the guys that identified very early the Chinese market. You know, the first conversation I had with Richard was this. He said, "Sully, you know, back when China was in vogue and investing in China was in vogue." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "There was a report that came out by one of the big broker dealers about a year before saying this is where you want to be, and nobody really believed it." There's a new one out. There's a new report out saying the same thing about West Africa. So he sends me this report called Impact Investing on West Africa, by the way. You can get this by going to AfricaIsTheNewChina.com. And here he is standing right in front of us. Richard, what's up, brother?
Hey, guys.
How are you? So are you still as bullish on this market as you were, let's say, 3 months ago when we first met?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, for us, every time we end up looking at data and you take a look at inflation and things like that, you can meet with every firm on the street and they'll tell you that for purposes of inflation, the only places that we're seeing growth and opportunity are South America and West Africa.
You know, we were just talking about emerging markets with Matt Pavich with American Retirement Store, one of the best stock pickers in the country. You just heard him say this on this program, is emerging markets are one of the places you look at because you're not going to be able to ignore Europe and their bad news. So why not get involved? You know, in some good news early. You know, emerging market economies are tough to define.
Sure.
And they're tougher to identify. You guys have defined as West Africa. You know, that is a heterogeneous group of countries. It's about 15 economies. It's what is it, $2.1 trillion in GDP altogether. In fact, guys, pull up the website right there. It says right on the cover there.
What's that part of the world been doing up till this point? I mean,
you know, for the most part, that part of the world's been a lot like China was 20 years ago, meaning that they've had, you know, West Africa's full of resources, but they've never lifted the middle class. So people have gone down there. I mean, De Beers and Tiffany's and Harry, they've been down there for hundreds of years doing diamonds, gold, and natural resources. Right. But now there's beginning to be infrastructure. There's, you know, I mean, it's not a big deal here in the U.S., but for the first time, you know, West Africa's got high-speed internet and like access to data and information.
The whole world.
But isn't that amazing, though, if you think about that? If you could go back to the U.S. right pre-internet, knowing what you know now, how you could make smart investment choices. That's what we're talking about in a country like West Africa. Nigeria, by the way, has a $206 billion GDP. That's mainly because of oil. But you also have two other major natural resources there that are not just in vogue, but are here to stay: diamonds and gold.
Yeah, for sure.
Now with the oil, the diamonds, and gold, you know, the big question is how do you invest in those parts of the countries? There are some companies that you can invest in.
You know, you can look at. I always say this: you can look at the big companies that everybody recognizes. You know, you can go and buy a Tiffany's, you can buy Harry Winston, you can buy things of that nature, and then you can also look at the companies that are on the ground level. You can look at a company like Oraco that I've talked about.
ORAC is Oraco.
You can look at any of those kinds of companies and see where the path they're going. But I'll tell you, I mean, whether you're looking at diamonds, the next big wave that you're also going to see in West Africa is going to come from the telecom side because, you got to remember, you have an entire, you know, we're looking at iron ore transactions and we're looking at telecom because at some point, anybody will tell you in the world that the population of West Africa is going to double in the next 20 years, 25 years.
Sure.
They're going to need steel. Yeah. And somebody's going to pick up a phone.
So you're talking about this is not a speculative resource play. This could even be an infrastructure play.
It is an infrastructure play because if you said to yourself, what are the big real businesses that really made big home runs in China? Yeah. I mean, you can look across the board. You can look at telecoms. You can look at...
Yeah, it certainly wasn't coal, which everybody thought it was going to be.
No. I mean, you know, when it comes to coal, China goes outside their own borders, and that's what they look for. So, you know, I will say this again. This is all about doing research. This is all about reading and getting your own information. So, you know, you can pick up the phone, you can call, you can get this report, and you're going to see in there, it's going to tell you to look for, you know, iron ore, you know, telecom, you know, and this isn't our research. I mean, this is done by some of the smartest guys in the country, and, you know, take their word for it.
Well, the best part about this is you can get this report. Go to AfricaIsTheNewChina.com. Thanks, no worries, Ross.
Let me read through this right now.
AfricaIsTheNewChina.com. And what's cool about that is that it's comprehensive. You don't have to go cover to cover, but you can. 800-998-AFRICA, 800-998-2374. Africa, as the website says, one of the most rapidly growing economic regions in the world. Right. Well, that's the issue here. But Richard, you bring up something there because infrastructure plays. generally lead economies out of recession and out of depression. In fact, if you look here in the U.S., one of the leading indicators for stocks is you look at the utility stocks.
Sure.
You look at transport stocks.
Uh-huh.
Those are all really infrastructure plays. If you look at North Dakota, the Bakken fields in North Dakota, basically the number 2 oil-producing state in the union now is North Dakota because of this big Bakken field. Mm-hmm. The guys making money there are not just the oil drillers. They're the guys that are building the roads. They're
Absolutely.
the guys that are building the man camps for the workers.
Yeah.
They're the guys that are putting down the telephone poles and the communication structure. So that's what we're talking about. One of the companies you mentioned, Oraco, O-R-A-C, I did some research on them. I want you to take a look. We're going to put that on our watch list. That's one way to invest in the region.
Sure.
Is to find companies that have boots on the ground there, that are involved in there. The other issue there for me, Richard, is that in these emerging markets that you look at, you don't necessarily have to look at where they've been, because I think, for example, China, a lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth because China doesn't have the clearest disclosure laws when it comes to their issue. But if you look at and that was the worst possible scenario in my mind for a free market economy. Well, if a free market economy can work and outside investment can work in that petri dish, West Africa is much more open, much more supportive of its residents and its citizenship to bring them up. So I think it's a fantastic idea. More from Richard Steele with Africa is the new China.com. I want you to also take a look at this Oraco. O-R-A-C is a stock we're going to put on our watch list here. We're going to talk a little bit more emerging markets. Richard Steele, of course, our emerging market expert here on the program. It's the Big Biz Show. BigBizShow.com is our website.
I wonder if a Subway franchise would be good over there.
No, I bet it would be fantastic. Dow Jones up 72, NASDAQ up 24, S&P up 8. It's the Big Biz Show, BigBizShow.com.
Investors who have focused on gold have done well in the past few years, but to where are smart investors turning their focus now? Diamonds. The value of diamonds is steadily growing. In fact, they've averaged a 15% increase per year since 1949. Don't waste time and money investing in individual stones or coins. Buying is easy, selling is not. Look for many opportunities in West Africa where you can invest literally at the ground level. Mining and exploration companies are opening their doors for you to invest in their current holdings and activities. Gold, diamonds, and precious minerals have never been as lucrative as they are today. Call now for free information and a complete research report on what's happening in West Africa. Call 1-800-998-AFRICA. Call 1-800-998-AFRICA. Get the research you need today to invest for tomorrow.
The Big Biz Show and our affiliates, our hosts, are not registered investment advisors or broker-dealers. Our show hosts make no commitment that the purchase of securities of companies profiled or otherwise mentioned in our programming are suitable or advisable for any person, or that an investment in such securities will be profitable in general. Given the nature of the companies profiled and the lack of an active trading market for their securities, investing in such securities is highly speculative and carries a high degree of risk. We profile publicly traded and privately held companies on our program. We also do segments like Small Caps or People Too. Put that in your man purse and buy, sell, or hold. The Big Biz Show has entered into agreements to provide exposure for most of these companies, and those companies agree to compensate us either in free trading shares, restricted stock, or cash. To avoid all potential conflicts of interest, we do not sell shares into the open market during any company interview or any period thereafter in which the value of those shares might be impacted by our agreement. This means as we release new information about a particular company, either during our broadcast, on our website, or otherwise authored by us, you can be confident that we are not selling shares at the same time. Specific questions on compensation can be obtained by going to BigBizShow.com, Small Caps or People Too segment, or contacting BigBizRadio@yahoo.com. Listeners should verify all claims and do their own due diligence before investing in any securities mentioned on this program. Investing in securities is speculative and carries a high degree of risk. We encourage our listeners to invest carefully and read the investor information available on the websites of the Securities and Exchange Commission at sec.gov.
They voted Ben Bernanke sexiest Fed chairman ever.
Cool.
It's Sully and Russ on the Big Biz Show.
Big Biz Show, BigBizShow.com. CBS Radio, Armed Forces Radio, Biz Television, and the Business Talk Radio Network. Let's not forget You can watch us online by going to bigbizshow.com or wazillomedia.com.
Streaming.
Or if you want to watch us on your TV, just contact your local cable service provider today and request Biz Television. That's right there. Richard Steele with us today. We're talking about emerging markets. These are emerging market experts here. It's interesting. You brought up something that we haven't heard basically out of West Africa. And by the way, I want you to pick up a copy of this report. You see the commercial for it every day on the program a couple of times and throughout the day here on Biz Television. Impact Investing in West Africa. Just go to africaisthenewchina.com. Or you can call 800-998-AFRICA, 800-998-2374. And you can pick up a copy of this. It's basically a workbook, but it's data that they have put together, independent research put together based upon this $2.1 trillion GDP that represents a number of things. And we've been concentrating on the resource play over the last few weeks that we've had Richard on. But you brought up something interesting, and that's the telecommunications play out there.
Sure.
They're not up to speed with internet. They're not up to speed with communication. Those are, oh, by the way, industries for us that almost are too passive for us to invest in now are really cutting edge companies for them right now. So the way to do that, and Richard's point that out, that there's a number of plays, and he's going to identify companies along the way here over the next few weeks. But one such play is Oraco, O-R-A-C. They're a resource play. I want you to take a look at that. The other issue I want to talk about is this new class shift. This new class shift in this emerging market, if you recall, China had the biggest class shift in the history of the world.
Correct.
It went from poverty to middle class that fast. Are we seeing the same thing happening here?
You're seeing the seeds of that, but it's going to take infrastructure. I mean, if you invest in the companies that were the big winners in the 90s and the early 2000s here in the States, those are the kinds of industries that are going to do well in South America and West Africa, So
today. Once again, you roll back the time machine.
Yeah.
You look at the infrastructure that doesn't exist, and you try to find those companies you can invest in that are providing infrastructure and all the ancillary issues as well. How's the government treating business there? Is it a pro-business environment yet?
For the first time it is. And the way that you can really get on the pro-business side in West Africa is putting the locals to work. That's very much a key.
They don't want us going over there taking their jobs, but bring a company and hire some people.
Bring a company, hire the locals. If you give people a job, that's great. And to dovetail on the thing on telecom, I mean, you've got people that live all throughout West Africa, and today only the affluent can afford cell phones and things like that.
Right.
They're paying between $5 and $7 a minute to use a cell phone.
Because there is no communications infrastructure.
Correct. But we remember what we all paid for a cell phone. Remember what our cell phone bills were?
Yeah, you call, hey, I just got to go. I'm coming over right now. Bye.
Yeah, exactly. It was a 10-second call.
That's right.
So
I have to ask you, what is for businesses in West Africa that are vertically integrating? So let's say we've got a company like Oraco, by the way, that stock symbol is ORAC. Or you've got another infrastructure company there that is investing in some of the smaller business there using verticals. Those smaller businesses in West Africa, do they have access to finance right now, or is that coming from us?
They have access to finance if they have good relationships. But again, the reason that it's so important to do business with guys over there that have relationships with the government, because if you have relationships with the government and the government's going to step in and basically push business your direction, you can build it from a private sector as well as from a government sector.
Looks like all the people in the neighborhood are into it too. A lot of the institutional investors are Bank of Nigeria and Bank of
it certainly seems like the government and the finance infrastructure there is finally getting the word out, because they've been believers for a while. You heard about some of the institutional investors a couple of years back, but nobody was buying the story. Now people are buying the story. Speaking of the story, you can read all about it. You can pick up this workbook, Impact Investing in West Africa, just by going to africaisTheNewChina.com, africaisTheNewChina.com, and pick up a copy of that. It's one thing to hear us talk about it, but if you do take an idea and look through this thing, I'm telling you, you'll become a believer. One last question before I let you get out of here today, Richard, and we'll catch up with you again next week. We have not talked about renewable energy, and we have not talked about agriculture. Those are two actual industries in West Africa.
Sure.
Are they behind the curve? Are they ahead of the curve? Or are they still suffering from an economy that nobody's believed in yet?
Again, we talked about infrastructure earlier. I mean, ag is going to be huge in West Africa. They're going to finally feed everybody. But again, you need roads. You need equipment.
Right.
So you're not going to see ag really develop until until there's more infrastructure.
So that's the watchword. So resources in Africa and infrastructure in Africa. The resource play in Africa I want you to focus on today is ORAC. The infrastructure play we'll talk about next week. Richard Steele, our emerging markets expert. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. Once again, let's take a look at the website for the TV audience. AfricaIsTheNewChina.com. AfricaIsTheNewChina.com. 800-998-2374. 800-998-2374. Smart guy, and that's. You can also you see the spot come on here on the show. I think it's
with the cool music
a couple times an hour and here throughout the day. But yeah, pick up a copy of the report. I think you're going to like that. So.